In this video, we're going to combine everything that we've talked about so far, especially in ActionScript, to talk about how we can create a basic website from scratch. So hopefully in the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn how to create an entire website using Flash. It's going to be that simple. So we're going to create a new Flash file, ActionScript 3.0 here. And in this new file, what we're going to do is we're going to treat our frames a little bit different than we have in the past. In the past, we've treated our frames in our timeline as different pages in a flip book, and as we flip through that flip book, we're creating an animation. Well, instead of creating an animation here, we want to create a website. So we're going to treat our frames as different pages in the website. So we're going to start on frame 1, and frame 1 is going to be the main page of our website. So we're going to put a stop action in frame 1 so that Flash doesn't automatically start playing through. Now we're going to need a few layers for this. On one layer, we're going to have the content of our website. So we'll type in content there. We'll create a new layer, and on this layer, we're going to have some buttons for our website. Now the content is going to contain content that's going to change depending on what page we're on. The buttons are going to be consistent throughout the entire website. So our buttons are going to be on a separate layer, and they're always going to be the same. They're not going to change. If we decide to have anything else, such as a logo, that's going to stay constant throughout the entire website, we might create a new layer for that. So let's create a layer called logo. And then we need one more layer at the very top of our layer stack for our actions. So go ahead and lock that actions layer. We'll expand our timeline a little bit so we can see everything. And in our actions layer on frame 1, let's go ahead and create that stop action. So we'll click on frame 1, hit F9 to open up our actions, and we'll type in stop, open and close parentheses, semicolon to end your statement. And we're going to hit F9 to close our actions. So now when we start creating more pages for our website, it won't automatically start playing through the timeline. It'll stop in frame 1 until we click on one of our buttons. So the next thing we can do is go to our logo layer, and let's just create a simple logo. Let's click on the text tool, we'll change the color, and we'll just call this website.com. So we'll take this and we'll move it in the upper left hand corner. Okay, now we're going to create some buttons for our website. So we'll lock the logo layer, we're done with it. We'll go to the buttons layer, and we'll create a series of buttons. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool here. And we talked before about using movie clips and other symbols in order to save space. And if we create 4 buttons, let's say we're going to have 4 different pages, if we create 4 buttons that are going to have the same background on the button, just a different piece of text, then we can save the background of the button as a movie clip and include that movie clip in each of the buttons that we create. So let me explain how we're going to do that. So let's use that same fill color, and we'll use a black stroke for our button, and we'll just click and drag out to draw our shape. I'm going to sharpen those corners a little bit, not all the way, but you can use your up and down arrow keys again to do that. So that looks good. So there's our first button. We'll hit V to switch to the selection tool, double click on that shape, and then we'll hit F8 to convert it to a symbol. Now we're actually going to convert this to a movie clip symbol, and we're going to call this button BG for button background, and we'll click on OK. So this is going to serve as the background for all of our buttons. So now that we've created that background, we can simply go to our text tool, and I'm going to change our text color to white now, and this is going to be the text for our button. So we'll click on the button and we'll type in home. So this will be for our home page. We'll drag this to the center of the button, and I realize I'm making everything kind of big and bulbous here, but that's okay. Let's highlight the movie clip background and the text field here, and then hit F8 to convert that to a symbol, and we'll make this into a button symbol, and we'll call it actually let's call it BTN home. The reason I'm putting BTN first here, now remember this is not the instance name, this is the name of the actual symbol itself. The reason I'm calling it BTN home instead of home BTN or home button or something like that is because if we put BTN at the beginning, then when we look in our library, all of our buttons will be right next to each other because our library is arranged in alphabetical order. So when we go into our library and look at all of the different symbols that we've created, all of those buttons will be grouped together. So we'll call it BTN Home. It'll be a button. We'll click on OK. Now we've created that button. Now I'm going to get a little creative here. We're going to create several buttons here that are going to have the same background. So I'm going to copy this home button. I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and V to paste in place. So I basically just pasted it right on top of itself. And then we'll use the arrow keys to nudge this new button down. Again, we're going to copy this new button, Control C, Control Shift V to paste it in place, or Command Shift V if you're using a Mac, and then we'll nudge this new one down. And then we'll create a fourth one, Control C to copy, or Command C on a Mac, Control Shift V or Command Shift V to paste, and we'll nudge this new copy down. Okay, so we have 4 instances of the same button symbol here, and that's not what we want. We want to have 4 different button symbols. So we're going to right click on this second symbol, and we have an option for duplicating this symbol. If we click on Duplicate Symbol, it will give us an option for naming the new symbol that we're creating, and we'll call this Button About. This will be the About Us page for the website. So we click on OK, and now when we click on this symbol and look in our Properties panel, we can see that this is an instance of Button About instead of Button Home as we see for the first button. So this is now a completely different symbol. So we can go into the symbol by double-clicking on it, double-click on the text to go into that text field, and then double-click again to select the text, and we'll just type About Us. Hit Escape. And since this is a different symbol now, it's not just a different instance of the same symbol, it's a different symbol altogether. So when we edit this text, it's not going to change the text for the home button as well. So let's go back to scene 1, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go back to our selection tool, right click on the third symbol, click on Duplicate Symbol, and we'll call this one BTN, let's say Products. This will be our Products page. Click on OK. And so it converts that to a different symbol. Instead of the home symbol, you'll see it's now an instance of Button Products. So we'll double click to go into that, double click to go into the text field, double click again to select the text, and we'll call it Products. Hit Escape to exit out, click back on scene 1, and now we have our Products button. So now we'll go back to our selection tool, right click on the fourth button, and we'll click on Duplicate Symbol. And this one will be, we'll type BTN, and then this will be our frequently asked questions section. So we'll type FAQ there. We'll click on OK, and then since this is now a different symbol, it's now button FAQ, we'll double click on it, change the text to FAQ, and go back to scene 1. So now, if we click, we can see that we have 4 different symbols. And if we click on our library, we can see that those 4 symbols are all grouped together because this is in alphabetical order and they all start with BTN. So even if we had a bunch of symbols in our library, these would all still be grouped together. So we have 4 different button symbols that we've created simply by duplicating one symbol over and over again. So let's go back to Properties here. And now, since we're going to use ActionScript to point to these buttons, we need to give each of these buttons an instance name. So we'll click on the first one. We'll call it Home_BTN. We'll click on the second one. We'll call it About_BTN. We'll click on the third one. Call it Products_BTN. And finally, the last one, we'll call it FAQ_BTN. So we've created our buttons, we've created our logo, and we can now lock that buttons layer. We don't need to make any more changes to it. And now we just need to fill in our content for all of our different pages. And for this particular video, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. We're just going to use some text fields. So for our content here, we'll click on the text tool, and we'll type in page 1. Now we accidentally used white for the color, so let's change that to something that we can actually see. There we go. Now let's make it larger, and we'll move it over here. So that's been applied to the content layer here. So all of this has been applied to frame 1 of our timeline. So page 1 is going to occur on frame 1. Let's say that we want page 2 to show up here on frame 10. So on frame 10 for the content layer, I'm going to hit F6 to add a new keyframe, and then we're simply going to change page 1 to page 2 and hit Escape. So now we need to extend these frames out, but let's go ahead and create our other 2 pages first. So we'll jump out to frame 20, hit F6 to add a new keyframe there, and here in frame 20 we'll change this to page 3. We'll jump out to page 30, hit F6 to add a new keyframe there, and then change that to page 4. So we have our 4 pages now. We just need to expand the rest of our layers out. So I'm just going to click and drag up for the rest of the layers on our timeline, and then just hit F5 to insert frames. So we can now see that our buttons and our logo are now visible on all 4 pages of our website. And if we hit Control Enter to test, we can see our website in action. Now our buttons don't work yet, and we'll get to that in the next video, but we have our basic website set up, and it was very easy to do. So basically what we're doing is we're just treating different frames as different pages in the website. And obviously, instead of just having page 4 here, you would have, a title, maybe some images and some text and things like that. But that's how you can set up a basic website using Flash CS4. So let's save this file. We'll go to File, Save As. In the Project Files folder, I'm going to save this as website01.fla. I'm calling it 01 because we're going to end up with different versions of it. We'll start with 01, we'll click on Save, and that file will now be available for you inside your Project Files folder.